I'm going to talk about the so-called clay plug, the playa deposits, and whether or not they impact the minimize the impact of pumping on the Verde River. So the leader here is the Big Chino water ranch above and largely disconnected from the primary sources of groundwater that contribute to outflow of the Verde River. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation study that Bill referred to concluded that the upper and lower parts of the Big Chino Valley are not hydrologically isolated, but rather are in direct hydrologic connection. And two, the flows in the Verde River can be accounted for by the known recharge sources in the Big Chino Valley and from aerial precipitation. The Bureau further stated, the groundwater models indicate that the groundwater in the Big Chino Basin is hydrologically connected to the upper Verde River. Analysis of the results of the groundwater models imply that there is no continuous impediment to the flow of water from the northern part of the valley to the upper Verde River. And the northern and southern parts of the valley are hydrologically connected to the east, west, and beneath the semi-pervious material that has been referred to as the clay barrier. These are the words of the Bureau of Reclamation. They didn't know about clay plugs at that time. Next. The 1994 Bureau study further demonstrated that the basin fill and underlying limestone aquifer in the Big Chino Valley are hydrologically connected, and that water moves vertically between them to discharge to the upper Verde River, meaning that there is ample pathway around the clay body. The clay-rich body is real, but there are ample pathways around it to hook the groundwater in the upper part of the Big Chino Valley to the headwater springs. Thus, pumpage in either aquifer, meaning the limestone aquifer or the basin fill aquifer, will reduce flow in the Verde River by an amount equal to or nearly equal to pumpage. Next. To get this into a little bit of real detail, this map is taken from a report that Southwest Groundwater Consultants did for the city of Prescott. The primary reason for using it is that they had a nice, fairly visible portrayal of the best estimate of the outline of that clay-rich body in the Big Chino Valley. And it's this light-colored area right here. The Big Chino Water Ranch is right up in here above this clay body, and the springs, of course, are down here near Paulding. I want to call your attention to this line CC prime, which is a geologic cross-section that crosses the so-called playa deposit, or clay plug, if you like. The contention about the issue stems from the recognition that this body is there. A consultant for the city back around 1990 published well, I won't say published, prepared a report for the city of Prescott that concluded that this body of clay isolates the upper part of the river from the springs, and I think it said more or less Prescott can pump to its heart's content in the upper valley without having any effect on the river. So that's where this idea, I think, really gained traction. And I think everybody who talks and has thought about this agrees that even that clay body isn't impermeable. Water moves through it, but at a slower rate than it would through sand and gravel. Anyway, I want to call your attention to this line, which is a line of cross-section across Big Chino Valley and across a part of that clay-rich body. Next, John. So here's the cross-section. This is the west end. This is the east end. This mustard-colored unit in here is Precambrian rock that's for all practical purposes impermeable. It marks the bottom of the groundwater system. There isn't much water moving through these rocks, although I'm sure there are cracks in the upper part and so on that water moves through somewhat. The blue color in here is that clay-rich body, and it spans most of the valley in this area. However, there are lenses of sand and gravel within it. There is sand and gravel under it in places. There's limestone under it right in here. These blue lines are wells. They were all drilled to get geologic information. I don't think any of them exists as a current water well, but they were to explore this body. This is a volcanic rock deep within this well that probably has sand and gravel below it. The point is that there are ample paths for the water, both in lenses through this body and in the rocks that underlie it, for water to move down valley. So let's go to the next one. So if the playa deposit, or the clay plug, really was a barrier, what do you suppose would be the effect on the river? What would it look like? Well, if the water couldn't move down valley past that, prior to any development, groundwater levels would have risen to the surface behind the impediment, that is right to the left, your left of this area hill, northwest of the clay body, creating an extensive wetland. The wetland would have existed for centuries, and if not millennia, and would be marked by well-developed, mature riparian vegetation. Big Chino wash would be perennial across the clay plug. This thing with diagonal lines on it is just my attempt to schematically show a wetland above the clay plug, up valley from the clay plug. I have no idea what its aerial extent really would have been, so it's just a schematic thing. And if there was a wetland at the surface, if not a lake, the water would have drained down valley, and we would have had a perennial stream across that clay-rich deposit until it reached a point down valley from the clay-rich deposit where that permeable deposits. Well, we would have had an extensive riparian area in this wetland and along that perennial wash that would have existed. I don't think there's any evidence that was ever any such perennial riparian habitat. So the lack of evidence for this clay body acting as a barrier to down valley movement of groundwater indicates that the clay plug does not block the down valley movement. Next slide. So, groundwater withdrawal in the Big Chino Valley will result in an eventual decrease in groundwater discharge to the Verde River equal to or nearly equal to pumpage. Increasing the distance of the wells from the discharge area only increases the time required for the withdrawal to impact discharge. It does not alter the ultimate magnitude of the impact on the river. The basin fill and the underlying limestone aquifer are hydrologically connected, and pumpage in either aquifer will impact the Verde River equally. Next, John.